This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
After all of the different areas of the town have had their opportunity to go before the Board of Finance, including the Board of Education, a preliminary budget is created. And while doing that, they have an idea as to three very important parts of the budget, which is the grand levy, the grand list, and the mill rate. Tonight's public hearing is a presentation by first the town government portion, and then we'll have the Board of Education. Please be reminded this is just a public hearing, a very important public hearing, but a public hearing nonetheless. That means there'll be no voting on any issues tonight. We're just going to have a chat tonight. The town budget meeting is going to be the next thing that takes place. And that's going to be Monday, May 13th, 2024, where there will be some voting on certain issues, with the actual budget being adjourned to a referendum. And that referendum will take place on May 21st, 2024, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at one poll, and that will be at Mildred Wakely Recreation Center. Finally, what I do is every year we take turns who's going to go first, and this year it's the town government side. So I'd like to first introduce Mr. Mike Frieda, followed up by Mr. Patrick Sturch. Mr. Frieda, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacy, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and for those watching on Facebook, and for those that will end up watching on North Haven TV. I'd like to start by saying that in all the years that we've been together, this budget was probably the most difficult budget for us to deal with. So I'm going to take you through approximately 45 to 50 slides to tell you where we are and how we got here. And we'll start by taking a look at the entire budget. On the town side, the dollar change goes to $4,941,000, an 8.4% increase. And I'll be taking you through that as to why. Total capital last year was $723,533. It's moved to $1,308,000 for a $584,000 increase. Contingency remains the same. For those that don't know what contingency is, every year the town budgets an amount for an emergency. In years past, it was $1 million. Down through the years, we have reduced that to $300,000. On the Board of Education side, you'll hear from our Superintendent Patrick Sturck in a few moments. It's a 5.4% increase, $3.3 million increase in terms of dollars. So the total budget goes to $130,355,151, a 7.3% increase in this budget, and you see the dollar change at $8.8 million. When we look this year at the split of this budget, it now is at 50-50. The total budget, that 130 plus million, 50% on the town side and 50% on the board side. The town, in this year's debt service, is carrying almost $6 million, approximately $6 million worth of debt on the middle school and for the Board of Education. But the budget breaks down 50-50, and in the $10 million that you'll see on the debt service line, approximately $6 million is for the middle schools. We're paying that off. So our current mill rate is still among the lowest in the area at 32.65. This mill rate jumps to 35.30. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be very candid with you. It doesn't make me feel good to stand up here and present a mill rate to go to 35.30, or a 2.65 mill rate increase for this coming fiscal year. We provide a lot of services. We're coming before you tonight because we think that you like the existing service model. So we're proposing the 2.65 mill rate increase to sustain what we have. And I'm going to take you through what this consists of. But before we do, this is a look back to 2017 on what the town mill rate was back then and where the town mill rate is now. On a side note, for what it's worth, we have a surrounding municipality that has a 20 mills more than our new proposed mill rate of 35.30. They're at 55.4. On another note, and I'm involved, ladies and gentlemen, regionally and at a statewide level on a lot of different commissions and boards, and I interact with chief elected officials all over. We have a great town to the north of us that has a slightly lower mill rate than we do, but the residents there have to pay for trash pickup to the tune of about $400 a year. So we build in everything into the mill rate that we're proposing. Again, the proposal this year for your consideration as we move through this process and move through the process to get to the referendum, a 2.65 mill rate increase. So what does that mean to the average homeowner? Well, an average house in North Haven valued at $300,000, assessed at 70% of that for $210,000. It's a tax increase of $556 a year, or a monthly tax increase of $46. And I wanted to show you that tonight in the spirit of true transparency. Some will be less and some will be more. But that is what an average house would look like on this mill rate increase if the budget passes. So let's take a look for a moment where we were before tonight's presentation. This budget, ladies and gentlemen, started with a 4.4 mil increase. And we knew we couldn't come before you and present that. That 4.4 mil rate increase included adding services to the town. So what did we do to get this down to 2.65 mils? We came up with $6,201,000 in total reductions across all departments. Now I want to be clear, those reductions were in the requests from the departments, not off the existing service model. So we went from 4.4 mils, which included all of the requests. We cut that back 6.2 million. We cut back the requests to get down to 2.65. And the 2.65 preserves existing services in town. So you might be wondering, how come it's so high this year? Why is the town showing a 7.3% increase, even with the over $6 million in reductions from the requests that we had from all the departments? Let's start with the grand list growth. And this was a big disappointment to me, because as most of you know, I'm the economic development person here in town. And despite the growth that we've had, here's what happened. I had originally thought that with all the growth, we would have a 2.5% grand list growth increase, gross grand list growth. But we know that there's certain exemptions that come off of that. So I had factored in a 1.5% growth, which would have yielded $1.6 million in incremental tax revenue. At 1.5, that would have been a very solid grand list growth. At 2.5, we might have led the state in growth in those municipalities that didn't have reval. Here's what happened. We knew that there's a state law regarding property tax exemptions for manufacturing machinery and equipment. And we always knew that the state doesn't reimburse the municipalities for the exemption to the tune of what it used to be. But what I did not anticipate was that some of our largest companies in town, the manufacturers, they got a significant offset in their personal property. So in the end, when we took that reduction by state law, we had grand list growth of 0.3%, which yielded only $336,000 in incremental income. Not nearly enough to sustain the organic growth in town, and nowhere near enough to sustain the request that came in with the original 4.4% increase. So let's take a look at some of the increases that we cannot control. And these are very important issues that municipalities should never kick a can down the road regarding these issues. Employee benefits, pension, and Social Security. That showed an increase of $713,000. For those that recall, there have been municipalities that have decided down through the years not to fund the 100% annual required contribution that keeps the pension system vibrant. One of the temptations, and years ago I spoke in Chicago in my business career with author Patrick Lencioni, and we were talking about his book, The 5 Temptations of a CEO. At that time, I was CEO of my companies. One of the municipal temptations of CEOs is to look at the pension amount in an annual budget and say, you know what, I'm only going to fund 50% of that. Kick that can down the road because I have to try to reduce this mill rate. Well, that's how municipalities get in trouble. That's how they have to take pension obligation bonds out and pay the debt service on that. North Haven continues to make the required contributions on the employee pensions. We've had some sad situations here this year, ladies and gentlemen, this past year. We have an employee medical insurance increase of over $1.6 million. That's somewhere between 20 and 26%. It's a huge increase. But we have to provide insurance for employees. And the way it works is we, in terms of a renewal rate, we get evaluated on a 13-month look back on the claims per month. And our claims were very high this year due to some very serious and significant illnesses. Our debt service. This has increased $346,000, which puts us over the 10 million mark in this year's budget. Let's take a look at that debt. Well, the debt is 10 million plus, but the increment in this budget, as I mentioned, is $346,070. That's to pay, in this order, some of the largest debt items that we're carrying on the books for the next many, many years. We all love the middle school. We get a lot of interest from other people in cities and towns that want to come to North Haven because of our campus, the quality of the schools, the quality of education, and that in effect raises property values, and which is good if you want to consider that your home is the largest component of wealth in your portfolio of wealth. So in other words, if you were to envision your home as a stock, you don't want your stock to decrease. You want your home as your largest component to increase. So we continue to reinvest back into education and infrastructure. Our police department. Now, you've seen the new building. A lot of people say, well, the building is built, it's beautiful. We upgraded it for our police department. We upgraded our firehouses 10 or 11 years ago. But that does not mean that they're already paid for. The payments essentially start and escalate after the buildings are built. So we have the middle school, the police department, road paving, and we're still paying off on the firehouses. So that's why there's an incremental bump on the debt service, because the escalation is starting. Capital, page 38 of the budget book. Let's take a look at the requests. The total amount of requests, or the total amount where we are, is about $1,308,000. If we look at the capital request in the budget that we kept in, for the fire department, a lease on one of the fire trucks, the SCBA equipment that's critical for firefighters from a breathing apparatus standpoint, and also PPE turnout gear. So out of the $1,308,000, we're allocating $640,000 to the fire department. For our police department, 3 new cruisers, this UPS system you see here, body armor, critically important for our police officers, these emergency light bars and siren packages for the new cruisers, and we're investing $10,000 in the animal control shelter. People love the shelter. Our people there do a great job, and the care of animals there is very important. So about $250,000, a little bit over for our police department. The library, $10,768. One is for, part of that's a strategic plan consultant, and then a couple of PC additions there. Public Works, in the engineering department, a vehicle replacement for $35,000. We are mandated to do this ADA assessment transportation plan, so that's an unfunded mandate at $150,000. Engineering scanning, we're trying to help Peters Rock, jetback lease, that's $70,000. That's a vehicle and apparatus, ladies and gentlemen, where if you have a clogged catch basin, Public Works goes out with that and flushes that out to keep the water flowing through the drainage system in the town. Pool and recreation, that's the general amount every year, ranges from $25,000 to $30,000. We need that. We have to continue to maintain the pool. Reval, next year is a reval, $20,000 to go against that, because we have to hire someone to do that. And IT at $65,000. So the total capital requests, as I mentioned, are $1,308,000. Now let's take a look for a moment at unfunded mandates. Every municipality in the state of Connecticut is subject to these unfunded mandates at the state level. So for North Haven, and Patrick, I'm sure will go through this even more. He may have a revised number on the special ed, but we have to invest $550,000 more in special education. Now, you may say, well, is that a mandate? Well, because we have a vibrant, strong special education program in North Haven, people want to move to North Haven for special ed. And what happens is, I've talked about this often at Board of Finance meetings, there's a volatility aspect to this. You can put a number in the budget, but there's an inflow that's unpredictable sometimes in the middle of a fiscal year. And our data, or the Board of Ed's data, is suggesting that we need the 550 or so in that range to fund the influx of students coming in for special education. The Board of Education has another unfunded mandate, $100,000 that Patrick will be allocating and talking about for this reading program that the state is mandating. And the state is mandating all the cities and towns to do these HVAC studies, which is a good thing, to ensure the quality of air in our schools. That's $200,000. The town, I briefly mentioned it a couple of slides ago, we're mandated on this $150,000 ADA assessment transportation plan. So ladies and gentlemen, that's about $1 million in unfunded mandates, meaning that we have to do it, but there's no reimbursement mechanism for the items. Let's take a look at municipal services that have been adversely affected by inflation. Our fuel costs continue to go up. Our repair maintenance on buildings continues to go up. We've seen a spike in electric rates. I mentioned building maintenance, the labor costs, materials, bridge work. One of the things that we do, I'm involved with Public Works, our town engineer, is to examine where we have these vulnerable bridges. Generally, we have to outsource those repairs, and the cost of those repairs have gone up. I've often said, a couple of years ago, it cost $200,000 to pave and mill a road. Now it's $300,000. We have Water Pollution Control Authority expenses. You might not realize it, but 70% of the town is on sewers, which is the WPCA, and 30% of the town is on septic. Pool chemicals, equipment again, and maintenance, all on the rise. Medical supplies are up, used by our paramedics and EMTs. We can't cut back on that. Public safety, there's a lot of costs involved with the increase that are increasing with public safety. I mentioned pension contributions. We've talked about health insurance costs. Even things, ladies and gentlemen, like office supplies and postage have gone through the roof. And I talked about the $346,000 in incremental debt. Now, I wanted to show you this as a transition, because in talking to people all over the state and all over the region, and believe it or not, with the thousands of people I interact with at the concert series, in our summer concert series, I hear a lot from a lot of people that don't live in North Haven. And a lot of what I hear is, we don't know we live in such and such a town, such and such a community. We're here from, we drove an hour to get here, and our mill rate's rising, but we don't know what we get for it. We don't see anything, a tangible increase in services, and sometimes we don't know where the money goes. So let's take a look at where some of your tax dollars are going as we move forward. I learned a valuable lesson about 4 years ago, and I was at a North Haven High School playoff game. When I walked in, before the game started, parents were converging on me. Half of them knew I played baseball, played a lot of games in my career, played all over the state of Connecticut, played all over the country at different stadiums. And this one comment that was echoed by maybe about 24 people, I want to share with you. And the comment was, Mr. Frieda, we're playing, maybe it was Guilford or Madison or maybe Branford at that time. And we're kind of embarrassed. I said, what do you mean? We hear parents from the other cities and towns saying, this is North Haven? These are the fields that we have that North Haven plays on? So it was then and there that I was on a mission to try to improve the high school baseball field and the girls' softball field to comply with Title IX. So we put a bonding package together of $3.5 million, and these are the items that were included in that. This also included fencing at the turf fields, scoreboards at Brozac and DeMayo fields, and a grandstand of 1,060 seats down at those turf fields, because we didn't really have the capacity, seating capacity there. So we're trying to improve the town. This is one illustration of where some of the money is going. We put lighting, new lighting on the Brozac and DeMayo fields. The pool roof was getting rusty on the top. If you drove by Elm Street, you'd see the paint decaying. So we had a study on that. The roof, if not addressed, would be structurally unsound and possibly could have collapsed within a 5-year to 7-year period. Now think about that, ladies and gentlemen. We have kids using the pool, seniors using the pool. So we're reconstructing the pool roof. The library, I think it was finished in the year 2000. Some parts have gotten worn. So now we're doing an interior construction that's not yet started, but our library director is spearheading that for us. The library roof repainting, we're going to be doing that. We can't have an optic, in my view, that shows two roofs. One is the pool, one is the library, rusty and perhaps being structurally unsound. So we bonded for, if you take a look at this chart, and you look at the far left there, I'm going to give you the numbers first and then give you some of the projects. So there's grants available for a lot of this. You see the grants funds that are available, the grant funds in the middle there. But the way the state works now is there has to be a match. So we bonded for the match to try to do some of these projects. The infiltration and inflow study, that's to ensure that the Water Pollution Control Authority is operating so that there's no sewer backups across the town. That would be devastating for a homeowner. There's a sanitary sewer evaluation study. Most people don't realize this, but those sewer pipes were put in the mid-1960s, and we've been maintaining them for years. So we're doing this study to see what the long-term vibrancy is on those pipes. We can't have pipes being crushed underground to create those sewer backups. We've got many roads in town. We just put an example here, Pool Road. It's like the Atlantic Ocean when it rains over there. So the engineer, myself, our director of procurement, we're all looking at how do we improve some of this infrastructure. Kings Highway, that bridge collapsed twice down near Mount Carmel. So we've got money now allocated towards that. And this 5-mile brook channel clearing, this is an area where people get flooded in the back of their homes because the brook is sort of outdated in terms of it being dredged, in terms of being cleared. So we're working on trying to minimize and mitigate flooding problems all over the town of North Haven. The senior center, now some of this has been funded by ARPA also, but we had a situation for maybe 2 years where we were down to one bus, seniors couldn't go shopping, couldn't go to the medical calls, so we want to help the seniors here, and there'll be a new bus that's on the way. Over at the senior center, we were there last month, the bocce courts are starting to deteriorate. So even though we do a great job in trying to keep them up, that's a big thing for our seniors. Bingo and bocce are two important things, so we're trying to help the seniors there. We did get a grant to add fire training bays, looking at 4 bays to be built over at the Northeast Firehouse. So that required us for $109,000 match to get $416,000. As we start May 28th, I think it is, our summer concert series, you're going to see the new bandstand there. So we're trying to improve the town in many, many different areas. So the point of this illustration is that we have to come up with $434,000 to get $841,000 so that we can fund the total projects of $1,275,000. By not doing this, over the course of time, we would have had to do these projects anyway, and it would have costed us the full $1,275,000. We recognize, and I recognize, that some people are saying, gee, 2.65 mils. And you're probably contemplating, can you get behind it? Even after I showed you all of the reasons why. So I'm going to take you through the next phase here in the spirit of total transparency again. Because if the budget fails, then certain things have to happen. And the first thing that happens is, in this municipal government, it's been like this for decades, that part-time staff is the first to get laid off. So you might be asking, well, what does that mean? What departments could potentially be affected by part-time layoffs? Our Park and Recreation Department, part-timers, many of them. Our library, we have part-timers there also. Our tax department, we have part-timers there. Our town clerk's office, part-timers there. Our finance department, part-timers there. And Public Works and Field Ops, we have part-timers there also. So when we look at what the part-timers do, to take away part-timers from these areas will affect services. And that is what I'm trying to avoid. So you might ask, well, what services would be affected? I just showed you the departments. There'd be certain recreation programs because we didn't have the part-timers that would have to go away. Possibly the pool hours would have to be cut because part-timers, lifeguards, they're very critical to the pool. Library hours and programming. We don't know the extent of what that would be, but possibly hours could be affected. Our summer concerts could be affected because the recreation department, a lot of part-timers help manage that for us. Bulk leaf pickup could potentially be affected because we do a lot of it ourselves with Public Works, but we also hire outside contractors, and that cost has been going up also. And I hope this wouldn't happen with leaf and bulk, but bulk trash could be something else. So these are the areas that I'm concerned about that could possibly be affected. So let's recap where we are. This budget supports education. This budget supports our existing public safety model. It does add 2 police officers in this fiscal year starting in January. So it supports the existing public safety model and slightly enhances our law enforcement side with 2 new police officers. This budget, if it passes, covers the inflationary increase in all of our existing services, some of the things I mentioned before. And most importantly, and this is why I'm supporting this budget, I support this budget because it maintains, at the very least, it maintains all of the existing services. It doesn't get us what we would have liked to have seen in terms of augmenting some of the other departments. But I think that the maintaining of the existing services is critical to keep North Haven moving forward. Here's a recap. Our next Board of Finance meeting is Wednesday, April 17th at 6:30 upstairs at Town Hall. We'll be back here on Monday, May 13th, here at the North Haven High School. And then, as you know, in this form of government, you are the decision makers. Those watching on TV, those watching on Facebook, for everybody here. You have a vote and a voice in this government. For those that have lived here a long time, some may not realize that in some cities and towns, it's 7 or 9 people on the council that make the decision. It doesn't go to a public referendum. Here in North Haven, it does. So I hope you come out. I hope that you have some comments, and I hope you continue to follow us along between now and May 21st when we have that referendum. And now I'm going to introduce and have Patrick Stirk come here and present the Board of Ed, and then from there we're going to open it up to comments and questions and answers. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Every time I follow Mr. Frieda, I feel like Ben Stein from Ferris Bueller. So please bear with me on this. Okay. Good evening, North Haven community members. On behalf of the Board of Education, I'll be presenting their budget proposal for the 2024-2025 school year. There is little to no change to the overall budget at all levels and within all departments. The far majority of increases are a result of contractual obligations, cost of benefits, unfunded state mandates, and tuition for out-of-district special education schools. Within this year's budget recommendation, there is a proposal to hire a school psychologist for the therapeutic learning services and a special education teacher at Ridge Road Elementary. These positions will be highlighted later in the presentation. So the budgeting process is one of the most important tasks the district and the Board of Education take on each year. The NHPS mission statement is as follows. It is the mission of the North Haven Public Schools in collaboration with students, parents, and community members to develop responsible, educated, and productive global citizens who can thrive in an ever-changing world. The vision of a graduate is the foundation for this budget proposal. The VOG provides direction, priorities, and frames how the district will utilize the allocated funds. So in creating this budget proposal, we were committed to maintaining these priorities. Maintain the district's focus on improving achievement and providing extracurricular opportunities for all students. Meet all contractual obligations and CSDE mandates. Utilize the vision of a graduate to drive budget planning, and to hire and appropriate staff to ensure that all students have a meaningful and robust learning experience. Provided through this budget proposal are resources to educate 3,200 students, mental health, nutrition, and medical care to allow students to access instruction, specialized services required for all students to meet their potential, diverse opportunities for students to engage in activities outside of their curricular pursuits, and transportation to and from school. So the current state of teaching is drastically different than it was 5 years ago. The CSDE continues to identify specific shortage areas. However, we are seeing shortage areas across content areas and endorsement codes. As a result, there are smaller applicant pools, and many of the applicants are not new to the profession. Many are looking for a change and already pretty high on the salary schedule. Since North Haven is a very desirable district, many veteran teachers are looking to make our district their new home. And I've stated this in the past, that we hire the best teachers for our students, and salary has never been and never will be a barrier. Over the past year, there's also been an increase in the number of paraprofessionals who have chosen to resign from their positions. 37 paraprofessionals have resigned since July 1st of 2021. Of that 37, 25 of them resigned in the last 18 months. The vast majority of these folks are seeking other types of work. They are not continuing to work as paraprofessionals in other districts. So as a result, our students have to deal with changes to their trusted adults, and the district is constantly restarting the training process for these employees. These shortages and turnover in staff are impactful to the overall budget, as new employees who could potentially be higher on the salary scale are hired to ensure our students have the highest qualified educators and support staff available. North Haven Public Schools continues to excel in academic areas and is providing numerous opportunities and activities to support the whole student. This portion of the presentation will highlight a few of those achievements, as well as how we are measuring the return on the community's investment. So the District Reference Group, or DIRG, is a method in which Connecticut groups similar school districts. The grouping takes into account annual household income, students who receive free and reduced lunch, as well as other factors. And this grouping, or DIRG, allows people to compare multiple areas, such as performance, expenditures, staffing, etc. So the average per pupil expenditure for DIRG D, which is our DIRG, is $20,161. North Haven's per pupil expenditure is $18,959. North Haven spends $202 less per student per year than this average. So just to note, an additional $640,000, or approximately 1% of the current budget, would be needed just to meet the average PPE for our DIRG. Also, for comparative purposes, North Haven is about $2,000 away from the lowest spending district and about $6,700 away from the highest spending district. This chart shows the highest and lowest spending districts within our DIRG. North Haven ranks 15th of 24 districts. This is a drop of 4 places as compared to last year's ranking. At present, I do not believe that this drop is impacting the education provided to our students. However, I am worried if this trend continues. So the district's achievement reflect a substantial return on investment based on the district's funding comparisons. Last school year, North Haven ranked 6th in the Smarter Balance assessment for English Language Arts and 7th in the area of math. North Haven's 5th graders ranked 5th in DIRG D on the Next Generation Science Standards Assessment, otherwise known as NGSS. We're spending below the average and in many areas achieving above average results within our DIRG. Our goal is to maintain and build upon this success. Annually, the state of Connecticut Department of Education releases accountability reports for each district and each of their schools. With these reports, they identify schools of distinction based on scores and growth. This past year, Clintonville Elementary, Green Acres Elementary, and Monteluise Elementary were recognized as schools of distinction. The district was also able to provide the following to our students. Over the past year, Assistant Superintendent Melinda McKenna and the high school administration, content area coordinators, have made a concerted effort to bring college credit-bearing classes to North Haven. This year alone, 13 classes have been added to the list. They include Advanced Personal Finance, Film Study, Theater 2, Journalism, and Botany. With the help of the middle school staff and administration, each of the content area's curriculum is in the process of being revamped to align with the vision of the graduate. The IT department installed numerous clear touch screens, or large TVs, in classrooms across the district, and their replacement for the Eno boards, which are no longer supported nor manufactured. These screens enhance instruction, and the teachers and students really enjoy using them. Again, thanks to our assistant superintendent, the district's relationship with Goodwin University continues to grow, and the ultimate goal is to provide career and technical educational opportunities for our high school students. The requested increase for the 24-25 school year was, $4,544,727, which brought the annual Board of Education budget to $66,188,680. This initial ask represented a 7.37% increase from last year's approved budget. This increase met contractual obligations, healthcare benefits, and increases in tuition. It also covered new positions in the high priority capital budget, which will be highlighted later in the presentation. At the March 20th Board of Finance meeting, a reduction to the board's budget was approved. The next slides represent the revised Board of Finance approved budget for the Board of Education. The revised budget for the 24-25 school year was decreased by $1,215,952, which brings the annual Board of Education budget to $64,972,728. This represents a 5.4% increase from last year's approved budget. This increase will continue to meet contractual obligations, healthcare benefits, and increases in tuition. The two positions I mentioned before, as well as the high priority capital plan, will also remain in this revised budget. So the Board of Education met last week to discuss and approve reductions within their original budget. This chart reflects areas reduced in order to meet the revised budget proposal. So each year, the district receives a reimbursement from the state for students who receive special education and also meet a specific threshold. This reimbursement varies each year and is never considered a guarantee. In order to reduce the risk factor from this year's budget, the reimbursement was not calculated into the initial proposal. But in order to reduce the overall increase, the Board of Education voted to account for the $668,000, which is a safe estimate of the potential reimbursement within the 24-25 budget. Medical insurance quote was provided by Brown & Brown and was recently updated, and it was decreased by $360,000. The amount budgeted for electricity was decreased by $60,000, and the professional and technical services line was also reduced by $72,000. Each of these reductions, the board's goal was to retain the proposed positions and not impact any of the requests made by the individual schools, as this would impact our students and our staff. With great difficulty, the board was able to achieve this goal. This chart shows the percentage change by category. The 4.94% increase in the salary line reflects the two new positions. The increase in the employee benefits line is due to rising costs of medical insurance. And the 32% you see at the bottom of the chart in the facilities line is due to the state mandated study that I will discuss further on the next slide. So I want to highlight a very important area of the budget, and it's a significant driver. And those are what Mr. Frieda mentioned earlier, are the unfunded state mandates. Two of these mandates are adding $300,000 to this year's budget request. $200,000 is earmarked for a state-mandated HVAC study that is required to be completed at the end of this calendar year and will be required every 5 years moving forward. And the $200,000 is only for the study. Any repairs that are needed as a result will be at an additional cost. $100,000 will be utilized to assist in purchasing a new K-5 reading curriculum, which is mandated by the new Science of Reading legislation. Melinda McKenna and a district team are reviewing programs and beginning to narrow down the state's list. The cost of the full program will run between $400,000 and $1.5 million. To assist in offsetting the costs, the district has applied for and was awarded a grant that will provide an additional $118,000 towards this new program. The legislation does not go into effect until 25-26. However, in designing this proposal, we believed it was important to include additional funding for the purchase in order to create less of a burden in upcoming budget years. Planning for the future. So within this year's proposal, 2 positions are requested: a school psychologist at Monte Luis Elementary School and a special education teacher at Ridge Road. There is also additional funding within this budget in order to properly fund the business manager's position. So the school psychologist will be dedicated to the students who participate in the Therapeutic Learning Services, or TLS. Currently, there is 1 psychologist who splits their time throughout the program, which is in 3 schools: Monte Luis, the middle school, and the high school. Adding this additional psychologist that would solely work at Monte Luis would allow our current psychologists to work at the middle and high school. Considering this is a program for students who require additional counseling and support, a dedicated psychologist is truly necessary for this population. And the additional special education teacher at Ridge Road would serve the entire school community. And the overall population at Ridge continues to grow, and as a result, the percentage of that population is qualifying for special education. This teacher will alleviate the high number of students and caseload hours that the current teachers have on their schedules, and will allow for more direct and supportive services. So $20,000 $20,000 was added to this year's request in order to properly fund the business manager's position. Our former accounting manager recently resigned, and in order to attract a candidate with an 085 certification from the state, additional funding is required. Capital projects. So the board approved a high priority capital budget which is included in this year's proposal. It was not removed as part of the reductions to reach a 5.4% increase, and it is imperative that the funds are earmarked for the physical maintenance of the district's 6 schools. This slide lists the year built and age of each of the 6 schools to provide context and need for the capital budget. The 24-25 budget proposal contains a capital budget which earmarks $190,000 to address capital needs across the district. This is the first time a budget of this kind has been included in the board's operating budget, and like I said, is extremely necessary due to the ages of the buildings. Even though the middle school is almost 7 years old, the average age of all schools is 45 and a half years old, with the average age of the elementary schools being just over 62 years old. And I mention this because it is imperative that there is a proactive and planful capital budget to ensure the needs of each school are being met. Keeping to this plan allows us to be, well, keeping to this budget allows us to begin this type of planning. So this is a list of the capital projects. A chiller replacement at North Haven High School to support the HVAC system here. The cost has been quoted at $40,000. Tennis courts at the athletic complex are in need of resurfacing. This cost is estimated at $45,000. However, it will need to be reassessed at the end of the tennis season. Replacement technology switch, which is necessary to keep the district's internet functioning effectively, is quoted at $75,000. And this switch is the first in a switch replacement cycle that will continue for the next 5 or so years. $15,000 is budgeted to replace the main door at Monterey School. This cost includes hardware and technology needed to replace the door. And last, the brick veneer at the middle school is broken in multiple spots. The veneer is located next to the basketball courts, and to have that repaired is estimated at $15,000. So that concludes the board's presentation this evening. I appreciate, as always, the town's support, and thank you so much for your consideration. No, just leave it, I'll come back.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Thank you, Mr. Frieda. At this time, we will, if you wish to come forward and ask questions or make comments with regard to the budget, please do come forward to the microphone here at the center front of the auditorium. Please make sure to provide your name and your address. This is not cooperating with me, sorry. Please keep in mind that each person will have a chance to speak with a 5-minute limit, thus allowing all others a chance to speak first before someone else wants to speak. So everyone gets one round, one chance, and then you're more than welcome to come back up after everyone who's had a chance to speak at least the first time. And with that, would anyone be interested in coming forward and speaking? Sally Boyme.
Good evening. I'm Sally Boyme, 5 Blossom Drive. I'm going to address the town presentation first with some questions for Mr. Frieda, and then later I'll come back up with 3 questions for Superintendent Stirk. This is my 11th budget season as a member of the Board of Selectmen, and this is the 4th budget that I object to. I don't take objecting to budgets lightly. Many minority party selectmen object to everything. I don't operate that way. People who have watched me and listened to me know that I do not disagree just for the sake of disagreeing. I believe that this budget is way too high. I am concerned about taxpayer stress. We had an almost $2 million increase last year for the average homeowner. That's $407. And now we have 2.65. That's over 4.5 mils in 2 years. I'm concerned for the high percentage of elderly citizens who are on fixed incomes and for the many folks in this town who live paycheck to paycheck. I do not want this budget defeated at referendum. I don't want any of those scare tactics and threats of cuts and losing bulk pickup or trash, or not bulk pickup, what's the other one? Our precious leaf pickup. I don't want that to happen. I want the Board of Finance to change this budget at their April meeting, and in recent years, they've done so. I would just like to tell you that we're one of the first towns to come out with our proposed budget, but one town, which is Shelton, has a budget similar to ours in the $130 million range. Their budget is going up, their proposed budget is going up 2.3%. Ours is going up 7.3%. Their mill rate is going from 17.47 to a mill rate of 18.17 in their proposed budget. And I will be following what other towns are doing very closely. This $8.8 million increase is unsustainable. We cracked the $100 million plateau in our budget in 2018-19 fiscal year. Now, 5 years later, it's $130 million. At this rate, it'll be $200 million in 2032, and we just cannot sustain that. I'm not sure why the First Selectman spent so much time talking about bonding. It was as if we were at that bonding town meeting all over again. The bonding amount only went up $336,000. I'm concerned about bigger items. And I just want to quote myself because I warned about these increases. You saw the $773,000 increase in pension and Social Security, and that's directly related to the number of employees that we've hired in the past 3 fiscal years. In 2021 and 2022 fiscal year, we went on a spending spree, creating new positions in our budget. We had the $7 million of federal pandemic relief money at the time. I think the Board of Ed had another $4 million, and I said, and I quote, I wrote in an article, "It is tempting to hire more people with all this federal money flowing, but when that money disappears, you, the taxpayers, will be on the hook for all that salary and benefits." And that is really what is driving this budget. I would like to ask Mr. Frieda 3 questions, if I can. First, in 2021, 2022, you and I were both very concerned about taxpayer stress during the pandemic. What is your feeling about taxpayer stress with this 8.1% increase in the mill rate? 2, regarding medical, you said it was a $1.6 million increase, but on page 36 of the book, under medical for employees, retirees, it's 1.9. Do you see any potential movement in that going down? The Republican caucus reduced the original amount by $647,000. Do you see a similar reduction possible? That would still put that line at $1.2 million more than the current line. And I would just like to remind you that that line is currently tracking for the current fiscal year after 8 months at only 66%. And my third question is regarding the fund balance revenue. The current year we are using $1,425,000 from our fund balance as revenue. This year, only $250,000. I know and respect that you're very concerned about the rating agencies. I understand that. But do you think there is any room to perhaps go to increase that revenue by $400,000 because to $650,000, which would still be less than half of what we're using from the fund balance this year? Because, ladies and
Ms. Boemi,
gentlemen,
that's 5
you help
minutes.
with the mill rate by reducing expenses and increasing other sources of revenue. Can Mr. Frieda please answer my 3 questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
As far as the first question, I'm always concerned about taxpayer stress. That's why I said several times it didn't give me great delight to present this type of an increase. I talked earlier about a 4.4 mil increase, bring it down to 2.65, and I think I closed the presentation by saying the people have a choice. Come out and vote. From what I can determine down through the years in North Haven, people like the services. So I'm proposing this budget to retain all the services. So I'm always concerned about taxpayer stress. We had years where we didn't raise the mill rate, but costs are going up. The question remains, do the people watching, do the people here, do you want to maintain the integrity of the services? As far as the insurance, I thought early on, maybe about 2 months ago, that we could reduce the number. But this is something that I'm directly involved with on a regular basis, working with our insurance agent to determine what the monthly claims history is. And unfortunately, we had a dip, but then we went back up. So to answer Sally's question, we won't know if there's any possibility on reducing that number until we get the March claims history in. And then, of course, the April claims history. But the trend was going up after a slight dip down. And keep in mind what I said, ladies and gentlemen, that the way this works is it's a 13-month look back. So if you get a low month on claims history, you can knock off a high month in the first couple of months of the 13-month look back. But if you've got lower months in the first few months of the 13-month look back, and then you replace those months with a higher number because of illnesses, cancer treatments, serious things that are going on in town, then you have to, the way it works is the renewal rate's based on the higher number replacing an earlier lower number. So that's the insurance. As far as the fund balance, what Sally's referring to when she said I'm very concerned, because I'm the guy that has to deal with the rating agencies. And these are some of the smartest people in the world financially. As smart, if not smarter, as some of the corporate people I worked with and dealt with in my corporate business career. They have given me a cautionary tale. And the cautionary tale is this: we're re-rating you AAA. Strong management, strong leadership, and outstanding economic development. This is what they say. On the flip side, the way the rating agencies work is that they will evaluate several categories in a rating call. Now, we score high in those levels that I just mentioned, but we score very low on the quality of the fund balance. By definition, I mean the percentage. So we're roughly now at 8.97% fund balance. The more common term on how to explain that is rainy day fund. Much like your own homes, our own homes, we want to have savings. The rating agencies want a healthy fund balance. They've quoted me 15 to 20%. That's where they want us to be. So coming back to what Sally was referring to, we decided not to use as much fund balance this coming fiscal year to demonstrate to the rating agencies that we're trying to glean our way off on spending the rainy day fund. So I suppose as this unfolds, that's something that perhaps can be looked at, but it may be frowned upon by the rating agencies. Is there a balance there? I'm not sure. But we did it purposely this year because they have given me the cautionary tale. Now, what does that mean? Well, we talked about earlier when I presented this town side about all of the projects that we've bonded for, right? Because we're AAA rated, and because we're rated among the top municipalities in the region financially, our interest rates are at the lowest rates. We save a lot of money on interest by being AAA rated. If we were to fall back because we're not demonstrating that we're gleaning off the fund balance or the rainy day fund, basically what they're telling me is at some point, Mike, that you'd have to be downgraded. And that would mean if we do decide to bond for more projects, we'd pay higher interest rates. So I hope that summarizes the three questions. And by the way, folks, I'm not up here delivering scare tactics. I'm just trying to be honest and candid by saying, if the budget doesn't pass, something's going to have to happen. So when I put that up there, it's not to scare anybody. It's to level, like I have and talked to the people, thousands and thousands of people over the past 14 years who have put their trust in me in this government. And I'm grateful that I get elected every year. I win elections at 85, 86%. We run unopposed. That is only because the public, for whatever the reasons, trust me. So when I put up a slide like that, I'm saying to you, okay, you've got a choice. If you don't want to pass the budget, there's going to be things that we're not going to be able to do anymore. It's not a scare tactic, folks. It's the reality. I'm being as honest as I can, and that's where I'm at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frieda. Who would like to speak next? Anyone? If no one else, yes, sir.
Good evening. Pat Nuzzolillo, 7 Mansfield Road, North Haven, Chairman of the North Haven Fire Commission. First of all, I'd like to thank Mike Frieda and the Board of Finance for a daunting task in putting all of this together. The Board of Education, it's a tremendous time-consuming process. Thank you for the dedication that each of you have demonstrated. I appreciate that very much. On behalf of the North Haven Fire Commission, I'd like to say that we firmly believe that the residents of the town of North Haven are in support of public safety. They understand the fact that our fire department and police departments work very harmoniously in support of the public safety of our residents. We're dedicated to support life and property. We do that through our personnel, both on the fire and police side, as well as the equipment that's necessary to do so. In the budget that was proposed by our chief, Chief Januszewski, he proposed to add 4 additional firefighters to this year's budget. Those firefighters were cut out of the budget. Last year's budget, we had proposed firefighters, and they were not approved either. As you're all aware, especially those that have been in town for many, many years, we started off with 105 volunteers in our volunteer fire stations. Many volunteers were there in each of those stations pretty much on a daily and an evening basis. Those volunteer stations are empty. We currently have less than 20 volunteers that support our full-time firefighters at this time. In the past, our full-time firefighters supported the volunteers. Now, when you have 105 volunteers, you're able to perform the duties that are necessary, as I mentioned, as far as protecting life and property. As we now stand with less than 20 volunteers and on staff paid staff on a per shift basis, we have anywhere between 10 and 11 full-time firefighters per staff, which means that we have 4 apparatus that we run on a shift. So we maintain the highways in town between 91, 95, and 91, Route 15, and the Route 40 connector. When an accident occurs on the highway, 3 apparatus are sent out for that accident to protect the firefighters who are on that highway, which leaves 1 apparatus or vehicle in town to provide services. We receive multiple simultaneous calls that come through our dispatch. So when the next call comes in, that 1 apparatus is sent out, and we have no other vehicles, no other apparatus to send. Nelson Ambulance is an option. They potentially could be called out to other municipalities because that's part of their responsibilities on a statewide basis. So there is a strong possibility that without additional firefighters added to this budget, the North Haven Fire Department will need to begin to what is called stack calls. That means when you call 911, a fire apparatus will not be able to respond to that particular call. We would put it in hold until a fire apparatus is released. Now, it's possible that there would be more than 1 stack call. But the truth of the matter is, and again, it's not fear-mongering, as Mike indicated, it's the truth about what we are capable of doing with the monies that will be allocated to public safety for the residents of this town. And this is for the grandmas and grandpops and babies and moms and dads and all of us who are in town, whether we live in town, we're visitors of town, or we're businesses in town. We provide all of that support through the fire department. So I am, on behalf of the North Haven Fire Commission, advocating to add back into this year's budget the 4 firefighters that were proposed by Chief Januszewski and supported by our North Haven Fire Commission on a bipartisan basis. I was happy to hear Mike speak about the fact that our renovations of the fire department were 10 years ago, almost 11 years now. And as you might imagine, public buildings that are now 10 or 11 years old have all kinds of issues that need to be maintained, whether it be the HVAC systems, the roof, the air conditioning, whatever it happens to be, the contracts on the elevators. So all of those things, even though we think, oh my goodness, we spent all this money on the fire department, now we're looking to spend additional monies because now the buildings are 10 or 11 years old and they're utilized on a daily basis by our fire staff.
That's 5 minutes, Mr. Nuzzolillo.
Very much. One last thing, I'd like to thank each and every one of our volunteer firefighters for the years of dedication that they provided for the residents of this town, saving literally millions of dollars of income. Thank you, volunteers.
Thank you. Would someone else like to come forward and speak? Yes, Ginny Caldwell? Ginny?
Jenny Caldwell, 69 Kimberly Circle, North Haven, obviously North Haven. I first of all want to thank Pat because you did a really nice job of explaining the concerns with the current budget of the fire department. I'm not going to be supporting this budget, and I will not support another budget as long as we continue to ignore the personnel needs of the fire department. I think the other thing is, when you look at the budgets that were initially proposed, there was also some really important equipment that the fire chief has now asked for multiple years in a row, and multiple years in a row it's been cut. For example, the extrication equipment has now been cut twice in 2 years. And if you find yourself on the highway or in any situation where you're trapped in a car and the fire department needs to get you out of that vehicle, you need to have equipment that is working and able to get you out of that car. So again, I'm not going to be supporting this budget. I think that we do have options to look at what our priorities are, and public safety, to me, should be on the top of that, continuum. And then the last piece is, if this budget does not pass, I hope that the town looks at creative ways of deciding how to deal with the fact that the budget is voted down, or even at the next April meeting, the Board of Finance starting to be a little creative. We don't need to be necessarily cutting part-time staff. Maybe we need to look at a package of town services. I've talked multiple times about the convenience center, in which everyone can come and dump as much equipment as they want to, or products as they want to, sometimes big soda machines. Maybe there needs to be a way to look at, being charged based on the weight of what you're dumping. I would certainly be willing to pay a little bit more for my services in order to make sure that we have a fire department that is funded the way it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to come up and speak? Please raise your hand. Oh, yes, ma'am. Come forward, please. Mary White.
Mary White, Summer Lane. So we heard what services could be cut or reduced if the budget doesn't pass. I don't think it's a fear tactic. I just think it's fact. So I just wanted to remind people of that, because many of us enjoy these services. So the part-time staff would be laid off. Recreation programs would be affected. Pool hours, library hours and programs, summer concerts, bulk leaf pickup, bulk trash pickup. Okay, so I wanted to ask, can someone please tell us how much money would need to be cut from the budget to reduce the proposed mill rate by $0.5 mil or by 1 mil? And my last question is, could 2 firefighters be added back into the budget to go into effect January 2025? And what would that cost?
So Mary, the first question is, that you try to provide an answer, is that to cut the budget 1 mil is approximately $3.3 million that have to come out of this budget. To cut it a $0.5 mil, approximately $1,650,000, the approximate numbers in that general area. As far as the second question, I mentioned earlier about these upcoming dates. It'd have to go back to the Board of Finance. It'd have to be a discussion to see what, if that is something that could be done. And, I'm just going to estimate what the cost would be based on your question. I would say it would be $150,000 for half a year, maybe $150,000 to $200,000, let's say. That's an estimate, depending on the starting salary, depending on the overtime, whatever would have to be part of that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. White, you still had time. Are you all set?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Keep in mind, we have a town meeting form of government, a direct democracy, and this is your chance to speak. As Mr. Frieder pointed out, most towns these days don't have that anymore.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Mr. Frieda, Mr. Stirk. I spoke last year.
I just need you to
say your name and address.
Sure thing. Scott Friedman, 17 Cooper Road. I spoke last year at this session, and it was disheartening to follow that about a week and a half later when I went to the Board of Finance and heard that there really was no discussion of many of the critical pieces of feedback that came up here. I believe the only changes between, I think it was like April 4th and April 19th last year, had to do with a move of volunteer firefighter support that it was grand total of about $10,000 or so dollars. So I come back here today to speak about this budget, and I will say openly that I will support the budget because I've seen what happens in this town when we don't pass the budget that the Board of Ed and the town have asked for. So first and foremost, I support the budget. What I'm having trouble with at the moment is that yet again, police is at the high end of the percentage increases. I think we have wonderful public safety, but after hearing the fire department 2 years in a row feeling like they're not getting what they need, I think we need to think really clearly about whether we need two more police officers or 2 more firefighters. Some of the fire equipment that Jenny Caldwell had spoken about, we talked about last year, and I don't know if we got some of it last year through grants, which was told to me at the April 19th last year Board of Finance meeting, or if we didn't. But again, we need those critical public safety pieces of the puzzle. But I came here in part actually to deliver some feedback that my wife had sent through. And I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak as if I'm just reading hers because I think this is really important. I'm the parent of a kindergarten in the Ridge Road Elementary School. In many ways, our introduction to public school has been lovely, but the amount of bullying is extremely disturbing. When I reached out to the parents of 3 other children in my daughter's class, every one of them described their child experiencing ongoing bullying and showing subsequent anxiety about going to school. One of them is even talking about leaving the school system. It's gotten that bad. While the school has been informed about this, it seems like there simply are not enough adults in the classroom to address this level and frequency of issues. Asking one teacher to teach 18 to 20 students how to read, do basic math, and behave in school is already hard to imagine. Why would we think they can also manage and monitor chronic bullying behavior at the same time, let alone prevent it? As I understand it, North Haven's elementary schools do not have any non-special ed paras. The Board of Finance needs to allocate funds for this immediately, and the Board of Ed needs to ask for it. Our country's in the midst of a youth mental health crisis, and we're seeing it here even in our youngest students. And make no mistake, this is a safety issue. If we don't tackle bullying now, it will only get worse, leading to more costly and painful consequences for all of us. Getting paras in the classroom where they are needed is the bare minimum and a necessary first step, and I'll extend to the buses, where we don't have bus monitors and where there's been situations on the bus that I've heard about just about once a month this year. Our Board of Finance needs to take our kids' safety seriously. I also want to expand to the fact that I watched the presentation on the capital budget and I said, wow, for the first time in my entire time in North Haven, we have a capital budget for the Board of Ed. That's a great thing. And I looked up and I saw very important things up there, but we talked about the age of the schools, and my daughter's at a school that was built in 1949, way before I was born, way before my house was built, and all I can say is, it needs capital improvements. We probably need new schools, and we need to start thinking ahead, budgeting for capital improvements to keep our older buildings working the way they're supposed to, and to keep our kids safe, and to keep our town healthy and attracting the people that we want it to. We had a Board of Ed primary in September, and the constant thing I spoke about on the doors when I talked to people was that we need to build a positive vision for the future for this town. We have a lot going for us, a lot. And we need to invest in education because it will be paid back in droves in people coming to buy the houses that even the seniors who are on fixed income want to sell, to the families that want to keep their families here to rent, perhaps. We can attract more people, people to come and build housing, people to come and buy housing in our town if we invest in our schools. So seeing for the second year in a row, police way outpass the Board of Ed and fire.
I'm sorry,
is
you have
concerning.
5 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to come up to speak? Please raise, yes ma'am. Amanda Gabriel?
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Gabriel. I live at 18 Renee Lane. I serve on the Board of Education here, but I'm not here representing the board tonight. I'm here representing all the data nerds in North Haven. So I want to talk a little bit about inflation. The third selectman has pointed out on various occasions that in 2018, we passed the $100 million mark for our budget. So, and now we're at 130. So that, it sounds like a big jump, right? But the thing about inflation is that it compounds. So there are calculators out there that you can put these numbers into and say, okay, so in 2018 dollars, what is that in 2024 dollars? Surprise, surprise. I also looked at the prior 3 years and the subsequent 3 years, just to get a good baseline, make sure we got a good sample there. The Board of Ed side of the budget is actually 3% less than it was in 2018, if you account for the inflationary measures. So that does mean that we are doing more with less, and part of that is on our assistant superintendent making miracles every day, our superintendent doing wonderful things, our interim director of student services helping to bring special education students back into our district, which does help to not only build community within our schools, but also it is a better investment for our taxpayers. So I do think that there are several things in here that they are maybe good talking points, but you really have to interrogate them. You have to interrogate the data. We also talked about Shelton for a minute. I may be wrong, Mr. Nuzzolillo, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe Shelton has a majority volunteer fire department, don't they? Is it entirely volunteer? It's pretty close. It's pretty close. So we have, I love our volunteer firefighters. A good friend of mine just left, and he's a volunteer firefighter here. I appreciate their service, but I think relying on our career firefighters is a much better idea. It provides us a much better value and much better services. So I certainly support our fire department. And I want to just give a big shout out to our library. Our library is just about the best in the state of Connecticut, and I will fight anyone who says differently because we have the best programming. We have rich textbooks there. We've got all kinds of good stuff going on. So these are the kind of things that to me as a parent make a big difference. They're a big deal. I also just want to take a moment to quote Selectman Buemi to herself, too, tonight. At the 4-4 Board of Selectmen meeting, she said, quote, "It's easy to say you believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, but to take action is something else. And to consistently argue against positions like the ELA teacher for the Board of Education, the special education teachers, and therapeutic service teachers is contrary to that position. My father and I talk about politics a lot. He's on the other side of the aisle from me, but we're both big municipal government nerds, and we both agree that actions speak louder than words. And we do need to make sure that we have actions to back up our words." That's it.
Thank you very much. Who would like to speak now? I know someone wants to speak, but you're shy. Come on up, please, Mrs. Nancy Barrett.
I have a few hello everyone, I'm Nancy Barrett. I live at 1 Crestview Drive here in North Haven. I am a member of the Board of Finance, an elected member twice now, and very happy to serve you all. But this evening I'm simply just like the rest of you. I'm just a citizen of our town. So I have a few questions for Superintendent Stirk. So Patrick, if you wouldn't mind stepping up to the microphone, I would like to ask you a few questions. Thank you. So, Patrick, in the current BOE budget, I need to focus on the current budget in order to make the point about the proposed budget. In the current BOE budget, that's the 2023-24 budget, in section 111A, that's what covers all administrator salaries, is there an expenditure line item for the second, most recently added middle school assistant principal that was hired back in August?
There is.
There is no line item for that.
It's within the salaries for administrators. I know there was a misprint when we spoke at the board.
Well,
of Finance.
I've looked at the budget, and there's no line item for that particular amount, nor is there an additional amount, because some of them are clustered. So the reason that I'm asking this question is, although this person was hired mid-fiscal year without the benefit of a referendum last year, and that's certainly your prerogative, this position is not in the budget. So by definition, from an accounting standpoint, it is considered a new position for the proposed budget. So we talked about this at the workshop. You referred to it as a misprint, but the reality is this person has been paid for the past 9 or 10 months. So clearly there is money in your current budget in order to carry this additional administrator that is not a budgeted position. And
Can I just comment real quick on that one?
Sure, go ahead.
That position prior to being a middle school assistant principal, it was a dean of students position. It was in the teachers bargaining unit. That position was converted or transitioned to the administrators union to be an assistant principal. So that, I believe it was about $105,000 or so of that position was moved into the administrator's salary. Granted, it had to be increased to meet the contractual salary for a middle school 10-month or 11-month principal, but it's not a brand new position. It
didn't exist this year, and it didn't exist last year, and you're proposing it for the upcoming budget as a line item that doesn't exist right now. So in my book, that's a new position. From a contractual standpoint, you may have a point, but ultimately, I believe in transparency, and if you're going to say that you're only asking for 2 new positions, when in fact you're actually asking for 3. So I think that's an important distinction. And then my second question for you is it true that in the Board of Ed budget there is both, well, all 3 things, a $200,000 request for capital in your budget, and that's in addition to, in the very first column of the 5-year capital improvement plan, there's a Department of Education request for $415,000, and those 2 numbers are in addition to having access to the BOE surplus funds that have been provided. It's a non-lapsing fund, for those that don't know. At the end of each year, if there's any money left over in the Board of Ed budget, the Board of Finance has the discretion to provide that money to the Board of Education to use at the superintendent and the board's discretion. So in this year, it was used actually for some capital improvements. So the question is, will you have access to all 3 of those sources of funds?
So the non-lapsing, you're
Yes.
saying the $190,000 in the capital budget, and what's
200.
the third?
200 in the current budget.
Okay, what's
Yep.
the third?
And the third is under Department of Education, there's a $415,000 capital line for Department of Education. So, and this is in our 5-year capital improvement section of the budget, which normally I consider totally separate from the budget, but that very first column is for 24-25. So I'm just trying to understand how that relates to your budget.
Nancy, let me go sit and talk with Christian for a minute. I'll come back and answer that question.
Okay, sure. All right. In the meantime, let me just ask you 2 other questions. So while you certainly, in the budget books that are provided, pages 3 and 4 of the budget book have been updated to reflect the new Board of Ed budget total amount, which is about $1.2 million lower. The guts of your budget has not been updated as far as I could tell. So one of the things that I found very interesting was in the last version of the budget was the discretionary funding, which was about $2.8 million. So do you have a sense in this new version of your budget what the discretionary funds would be?
Very similar to last year.
So in this budget, would it be $2.8 million?
I'm not going to say exactly, but it's in that ballpark, yes.
Okay. And then my last question for you, Patrick, is based upon information that Mr. Frieda has provided the Board of Finance, are you aware that Governor Lamont has shared with the First Selectman that the excess cost grant is the only funding from the state that will in fact increase for the year? And you are currently, based upon this new version, budgeting about $668,000 in excess cost reimbursements. Originally, it was just zero. But for the past 3 years, as you know, it's been about $956,000, $796,000, $819,000 for an average of about $857,000. So I guess the question is, why is there such a discrepancy between what you're budgeting for, this $668,000, and then the last 3 years?
And that's 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. It is a volatile line no matter how you look at it. We were expected to receive, I believe, 71% this year, and when it came in, it was 68%. So there's never a guarantee. To answer your question, I was not aware that it was, Governor Lamont said it was going to go up. I love the trust in that, but I do
Everything
know,
else is going to be flat, but that one source of funding will actually
Nancy,
go
I'd
up.
love to see that to be the case.
I would love it, nothing more, absolutely.
Because
So-
we've seen it drop a few times, and then, like I've said multiple times at the Board of Finance meeting, that is one of our hardest costs to figure out, because the threshold sometimes increases for the reimbursement. The number of students who are coming into district we cannot control, and we're here to serve everyone. But to project what we're going to get in return, it's difficult for us.
Right.
So the board, myself, Christian, we wanted to take some of the risk out of it initially, and that's why there was a change in not putting the excess cost in initially. We did put
Right,
60.
so you budgeted for zero, and now you've
Initially,
increased
yes.
it. Yeah. Okay, well, I do have some questions for Mr. Frieda, but I'm happy to come back to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Come on, I know you want to speak. Come on. Yes, please come up. Mr. Gabriel.
Hello, Tim Gabriel, 18 Renee Lane. So every time we go through this budget cycle, I tend to sort of say that my priorities align with what I think would be kind of the priorities of the average North Havener. And that's that what I'd say is like the fundamentals of the budget as a moral document are within education and safety. Those are kind of like the main things that I would focus on. And I'm going to start with education because this year marks a little bit of a milestone. Even though the budget seems to have changed a little bit from what I last saw it, our school has, for the first time, fallen below 50% of the total budget for the town. If we compare that to previous year's numbers, this would put us at the very bottom of proportionate spending between the town and education side, between peer schools. Some of this has to do with the increased budget on the town side, but certainly that's not all of it. Now, we like to brag here in North Haven that we have a great value and a great bargain for our schools, that we punch above our weight class, and that we can make a dollar go farther than many of our neighbors. And all of this is true, but at some point, in years when there are giant learning gaps, when there is a mental health crisis among youth, when there are inequities in the educational experiences of students, when the middle schools face rampant bullying and mistreatment, when teachers are under-resourced and burnt out, and when bus transportation is in disarray, that's not when you decide to keep slimming the fat, that's when you invest. Now, our Board of Education does invest in small ways and smart ways, but when you have $1 million decrease, that limits the ways that you can invest in the schools too. Our schools have been operating without a capital budget for a few years. I'm glad to see it in there now, but it's a little crazy that we haven't had a capital budget for a while. And as Mr. Friedman said, what we see proposed is not necessarily, going to fix the fact that we have ancient elementary schools. They swelter with heat when it gets hot, as it was, like on a day like today, which is, earlier in the year than you would usually see 75-degree weather. Despite the best efforts of our facilities personnel, they're falling apart piece by piece. And the expectation is that instead of investing or planning for the inevitable changes that need to take place, we would just kind of carry around our four-leaf clovers in our pocket and keep hoping that we remain as lucky as we are, that the kids in these buildings are not getting sick, injured, or worse by these facilities that need constant maintenance. Do we think that the additional, I'm going to skip that part. So this is not no impact to the students. There is a significant impact that's taking place through all this as well. And that would go to the paraprofessionals that we would need in the classrooms. We're not seeing them as much. The bus monitors, things like that. And the students, the parents, and the teachers, everybody that's in the school system notices these things. We notice the busted microphones that children are using for the plays, the field trips that folks from my generation enjoyed to places like Newport that no longer happen, the after-school programs that went away after COVID and have yet to return, chairs and desks that keep holding on one more year after year. So going after the minimal standard is not over-idealizing, going above the minimal standard, I'd say, is not over-idealizing or blue sky thinking. It's making sure that our children's futures don't suffer because someone somewhere wanted to save a buck. Now, on the safety side, it's clear that our fire department needs help. Response rates are the difference between life and death, and without volunteers to deter the costs, we're at the mercy of what we're left with. I, for one, do not want to have to cross my fingers the next time there's an emergency and pray that the problem didn't happen at the same time as another call. The police side, I think, is a little bit trickier. I've always felt incredibly safe here in North Haven for the 12 years that I've lived here, and no doubt part of that is due to the fine work that our police department does. However, I'm also aware that crime has been on a historically declining trend in Connecticut, with a slight uptick around 2021, but then a continued redecline immediately after that. That said, any amount of criminal activity is way too high, but what we're seeing in this area are a lot of nuisance crimes, property crimes, car break-ins, et cetera, things like that. These things definitely suck, like there's no doubt about it, and they can be nightmarish to deal with from the property owner side. I've had property stolen, I've had windows broken, I've had cars breaking into. It's very bad, and I don't like it, and it's not fun. But these are also crimes that have very low clearance rates. If you look at the FBI data on this, property crimes get cleared about 12.1% of the time. Motor vehicle thefts, about 9.3% of the time. Maybe locally those rates are a little bit higher, but we've been adding additional police to our force for years now. And at some point, this constant hiring has to plateau. This seems like this would be a good year to start holding back and just seeing what we can do with the folks that we have, and continue to remind everyone, as the police have been doing repeatedly for years, that we've got to lock our doors, we've got to secure those valuables, and hopefully the powers that be beyond our town board can finally take a look at preventative measures that address the systemic roots of crime, as I know Mr. Frieda, for one, is doing with his work with disconnected youth, for example.
And that's 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, and then thank you very much. I do support the budget, and thank you for all the work that the town puts into it.
Thank you very much. Please raise your hand if you'd like to come forward and speak. Yes, ma'am.
Leonda Firmo, 62 Juniper Drive, North Haven, Connecticut. I listen with great concern about the problems in our school, and I'm aware we're spending quite a bit of money on the state's mandate for a new program, Right to Read. And I'm wondering, Mr. Stark, how close have we gotten to getting a waiver from the state? Because our children are certainly scoring very well. My children 50 years ago had a Right to Read program. It was changed for the Common Core, didn't work. And now we're spending this money for this program when it seems to me maybe the safety of our children are more important. So can you address as to what's going on the state level for the waivers? Thank you.
Of course, thank you. So the district applied for a waiver, and we were rejected based on some conflicting criteria, some conflicting results we got back from the folks that reviewed our waiver. As a result, Melinda, myself, we've been in touch with State Senator Ciccarella and State Rep Yaccarino to discuss some of our concerns. And just today, actually, I talked to Chairperson Bathrick and State Rep Yaccarino, who is going to speak to the Commissioner of Education for the state to find out some more details around decisions made concerning the waiver. We weren't the only district to be rejected. And I echo what you said. We're very successful here with the programs that we're using. And actually, this legislation gave us an opportunity to really take a good deep dive into what we're offering our students here and improve based on what we know of our students, not what the state's mandating through their programs and through their state mandated curricula. So I do believe the Board of Education should have local control over the curriculum that's provided to our students, and that's something I did share with both state senator and state representative. So I'm hopeful to get some information back, and I will 100% share it with the community if there's any updates around that.
Please raise your hand if you'd like to come up. Yes, sir.
Antonio D. Pascal, 99 North Hill Road. I'd like to take this opportunity to speak in regards to this budget from both the perspective of a resident and perspective of a first responder in the town that I live in. Obviously, when I first heard that the town was looking to raise the mill rate, like any resident, I started thinking about how this was going to affect me and my family financially. The last thing anybody wants is for their taxes to increase. Then I began thinking back to the last time the town significantly raised the mill rate, and I honestly couldn't remember when that was. I then started remembering what we as a society have been through over these past 4 years, and when it seemed like the whole world was collapsing around us, North Haven didn't raise our taxes. They didn't ask for more from our citizens. They just asked that we stay safe and care for our families and our neighbors. I then began thinking from the first responder point of view and thought about that dark time in our nation's history. Every single one of the police officers, firemen, dispatchers, and public works personnel stepped up and started working extra shifts to keep providing all the vital services that we've come to expect as a town intact. On top of that, your first responders entered homes and dealt with individuals who were sick and in many instances dying, knowing that there was a good chance that we could be bringing that sickness back home to our families, and at the time having either limited or no knowledge of what COVID was. Regardless, we were there. As we slowly crept out of the pandemic, we began to see an increase in calls for service, not only in the amount of calls, but in the type of calls our first responders were dealing with. Domestics and mental health calls went through the roof. We saw an increase in the homeless population and an increase in thefts in general. We also saw an increase in the amount of time spent on many of these calls, necessitating more officers to meet the demands of the call volume and more supervisors to ensure that the calls were handled correctly. This unfortunately has left us little room for proactive enforcement. If we don't pass this budget, not only will our first responders continue to be shorthanded, we may lose many of our part-time positions, including dispatchers and crossing guards who perform a vital role in keeping our communities safe. The first responders in this town, especially the ones that live in this town, care about this town and want to keep the citizens of this town safe. North Haven continues to grow and change. We want it to continue to be a great town to live in. Both fire and police work as a team and need to grow together to serve the needs of the community. I ask you to please vote yes to a budget that supports our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you. Please raise your hand if you'd like to come up, please. Yes?
It's not me, raise my hand. Is it possible to not record her? She's a minor. She'd like to give a comment. Sir.
I don't think it's a problem at all. Come on up. In fact, I think it's kind of refreshing.
I've never been more nervous.
You okay with that? All right. Your name and your address.
Great. Can I hold it for 1 second? So I'm Brandy Mandato, 56 South Avenue. I was comfortably in my pajamas tonight watching this on Facebook when someone came over my shoulder and said, I recognize that voice. That's Mr. Frida. Is this happening in real life? Can we go? So here we are, one of the youngest kindergartners in the district, and she wrote her notes, which I think is a testament to Ridge Road, Mr. Mack, Mrs. Piccarelli, and the exceptional educators there who deserve all the resources they need to continue to do this great work. And now I'm going to be quiet because the floor is yours. I'll hold it, yeah. Can I help you read it? I can't help you read it. We want to keep all kids safe. Go ahead. Yeah. We want to thank Mr. Mack. So that says. I would like to thank Mr. Mack. Yeah. Huh? Oh, I don't know what that says. Can you tell me? Big breath. Take your time.
What does this one say? What does this one say?
Okay, I'm happy to say it. We want to keep all the kids in our town safe. We want to thank Mr. Mack. I would like to tell him a fun fact tomorrow. Oh, that's not it. Oh, sorry. What is it? You don't remember? That's okay, sweetheart. Thanks so much for doing this. Anything else you want the town to know about Ridge Road? No? Great. Thank you so much.
Now that was sweet. Anyone else like to come on up? Please raise your hand. If not, then we're gonna, yes, sir.
That's going to be a tough act to follow. My name is Kieran Ahern, 23 George Street. I don't have much to say. I just want to say that I support this budget, and I wouldn't want to see it cut any further. I think just the way that costs are going up, and we have services in town that we appreciate, and we'd like to see them supported moving forward. So I support this budget, and don't want to see it cut further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Please raise your hand. If not, I'm going to start going to the second round of those who've already spoken. Going once, going twice. I know I'm waiting to see if anybody else wants to speak. Okay. Okay. Now you can come up, Mrs. Blamey.
Thank you. There was one question, Michael, I had that you didn't answer. On your slide, you had for the town's medical 1.6 million as the increase. but the budget book on page 36 says 1.9. Which is it? Okay. While you're checking, I just want to say that I'm hopeful that the Board of Finance will do what they can at their April 17th meeting to reduce this mill rate. Now, you can do it one of two ways. You could reduce expenditures, and hopefully something could happen with the claims record, with the huge increase on that line, and there's also revenue. If you look at page 7 and 8 of the budget book, there's dozens and dozens of sources of revenue. Of course, the largest is from taxes collected, the taxes you pay on your home. But there are many other sources of revenue that I think that the Board of Finance could look at. So if those sources go up, that means less has to be collected from your taxes. Therefore, the mill rate would go down. So it's not just a matter of cutting expenditures. Although I do think at $8.8 million of increased spending, especially on the town side, there is some room for some reasonable cuts without affecting any services. I have great confidence in Mr. Frieda, who has promised us some significant grand list growth in the next 1 to 2 years. And I believe him. I have said multiple times, no one works harder than Mr. Frieda on economic development. No first selectman works harder, and I respect him for that, and he knows it. I just think that after having a mill rate increase of almost 2 mills last year, so the gentleman who can't remember when the mill rate went up, it was last year, coupled with this 2.65 mill rate is just a little bit too much. We need to let the grand list growth grow a little bit before we start expanding our budget, especially when it comes to hiring in public safety. Recently, the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen were asked if the people in North Haven should feel safe. All 3, including myself, answered yes, that we should feel safe. All I'm saying is let's wait for economic development to catch up a bit as promised, and I'm sure it will happen, before we start rehiring. And do you have an answer on whether that line is 1.6 or 1.9? In my budget book, it says 1.9.
So I don't think I need the microphone, but I quoted 1.6, which is the current employees. There's another 300,000 for active retirees, so it's 1.9 in total. We didn't put the active retirees, which is $300,000 in addition to the 1.6.
Okay.
The total is, you may remember when I said somewhere between 20 and 26%. With the active retirees that we have to take care of, it's about 26%. But the slide didn't show the 300 for the active retirees. 1.9.
It is 1.9. That's what I thought, and it is the 26%. So we'll see what the latest claims history has. A couple of years ago, we had significant decrease in that line at the April meeting, as you might recall. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that. And I just, again, think that we have to take into account our elderly citizens and our people in town that are living paycheck to paycheck. This is a very large increase. When this budget season started, Mr. Frieda said publicly he was hopeful for a 1 to a 1.5 mil increase. And here it is at 2.65. I believe that some additional cuts and some increases in revenue combined can get that down a bit to perhaps even 2 mils, which is still a lot for a lot of people, but it's better than 2.65. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
You have a minute
One
and a
minute.
half.
I'm very impressed that I was quoted by Amanda Gabriel. My comment, and very honored, my comment was about equity and diversity, was about my hope that a Hispanic would be appointed to the new vacancy on the Board of Ed, because our Hispanic segment of our population is by far the highest growing segment. I'm not sure what the point was about those teachers she's referenced. I've never, ever advocated against any teachers. I have advocated for very, very minor cuts in the Board of Ed budget, 200,000, maybe 250,000, which is almost statistically insignificant in a $60 million budget. But I'm very honored to have been quoted. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Barrett?
I just wanted to respond to your
Please, go
initial
ahead.
question. So you had asked about 415,000 labeled it as the Department of Education on the last page of the budget.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that, Chris.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
happy to.
So those items listed were in the capital plan. Those projects that total $415,000 outside of the brick veneer, which made it to the list tonight, those projects were never completed. There is not funds put aside for those projects. The funds that we have are just reallocated for more pressing issues that have come after the creation of this plan. With the age of our buildings, there's always things popping up on us, and we work with our director of building and grounds, our principals, to decide which are the highest priorities to address.
As I mentioned to Christian, usually the very first column of that segment of the budget, which is the 5-year capital improvement plan, that first column is usually replicated in our actual capital budget. So that's why I was a little bit surprised to see this additional category that I've never seen before in our capital improvement plan, which is the Department of Education. And just to clarify a point that was made earlier, the implication is that the Board of Education has not been able to spend any money on capital improvements in the last few years, and that's just patently false. There was one year in particular in which surplus funds were available to the Board of Education, and they spent $600,000 in 1 year. So isn't that true, Patrick? Yeah, okay, thank you. So I have a question for Mr. Frida. And this comes from people who have spoken to me about our budget, and the question is as follows. Given the fact that the current rate of inflation in our country is 3.2%, and the total town government increase on page 39 of our budget, so that's town plus capital plus contingency, is 9.23%, which services in this budget will be either new or enhanced, in particular for those members of our community, and it's a large fraction, who are living on a fixed income, in particular those who are collecting Social Security at a rate of only a 3.2% increase.
First of all, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Did you mention earlier that Governor Lamont told me that excess cost share is being increased? Is that what you said to Patrick?
Yes,
Why would you say that?
because that's what you told us.
No, I said ECS.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had said excess cost sharing.
You recognize the difference between excess cost and ECS?
Yes, I do, in fact, yes.
That's what I said.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I thought I covered a lot of that in this presentation. Senior citizen vans, parks, playscapes improvements, drainage, helping people with flooding issues. This budget allows us to take care of the people in distress who wonder when, in this case, when it rains, are they going to get flooded? Are their streets going to get flooded?
Mm-hmm.
So we've done a lot here. Hartford Turnpike and down in that area, near Sherwood. We put a new head wall in there because people were getting flooded. $300,000. So what I tried to describe here was what we're putting back into the town. What I tried to describe was we've enhanced areas that people are distressed with on the town side. We've taken rusty playscapes and transformed them for children into vibrant playscapes. We're trying to improve the town, the concert series. So I understand about the difference in inflation versus what this budget shows. But what we've tried to portray here is where the money's going. You may remember me saying, here's where your tax dollars are going. And I think I said twice that in this form of government, the people have a choice. We want people to come out and vote. So I thought I was clear, but if I wasn't, I apologize. So the money is going where people see it, where it makes an impact on their daily lives. That's the answer.
Yes, but again, the question is for, in particular, for those who have now had first this year and potentially another year of an increase in their tax rate that far exceeds the increase in their income, what are those people supposed to do?
That's why we have a referendum, to vote.
Okay.
So we usually get 4 or 5% turnout. We've been very open and honest in terms of giving dates, trying to keep the public updated as to when the meetings are. So we have the referendum in May. This is a government of the people's choice. I support the budget because it retains existing services. The enhancement is in the areas that I talked about through these bonding packages. Parents love the fact that there's a new track, which cost $2.2 million. That track was unsafe. Baseball fields are being upgraded. Girls' softball fields are being updated. This is the enhancement of the quality of life experience in North Haven. That's why we presented what we presented. So coming back to your question, I understand if people don't support the budget. I hope they do support it, but they have a choice. They can come out and vote. And that's what this government's all about, folks. Thank you.
Okay, and based upon the feedback at this public hearing, if either in response to this feedback or in response to a referendum that rejects the budget, I want to make it abundantly clear that the Board of Finance is under no obligation to begin by cutting, even starting with human resources at all, whether it be part-time positions or full-time positions. We can start anywhere in the budget. I think it would make far more sense if we were to cut positions, to cut those new positions that are proposed in this budget. And in fact, there are 8 of them. There are 5 on the town side, and as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 for the Board of Education. And if you factor in not only those salaries, but also the benefits associated with that, that far exceeds the cost of some of our part-time positions, such as the kids who volunteer or kids who work as lifeguards at the pool. So in terms of just some general comments about this budget, I think those who have actually been around more than 4 or 5 years actually remember a time when the budget would increase by 1 to 3% and maybe $1 million. Remember those times? They were cute, not 7.3%. And it seems as though we've been on this accelerated spending for both Board of Ed and the town over the last couple of years. And as Ms. Boyme mentioned, I think part of the problem was spending the short-term funding that we received from the federal government, and now we're actually facing having to pay for those positions, both the salaries and the benefits, out of our pockets. And one would think that given that we had a 1.94 mil increase last year, that this would be a year to have kind of a lean budget increase and maybe no new positions, but no, that wasn't the case. And I draw the analogy to a boat that's taking on water, and you have one group of people at the bow that are trying to bail out the water, while another group is at the stern adding more water. And so it doesn't make sense to be adding more positions when that's actually what got us into trouble. And if you look at the big boosts in our budget, it's in insurance, it's pensions, it's Social Security, it's personnel, it's policy. And so I think that we need to look very carefully at some of these new positions. And again, in terms of both fire and police, I think that we are not in any jeopardy of being out of any requirements in terms of staffing for either police or fire. I know that there were some comments made in our local press that basically implied that there would be reduced services, but that is not true, that we have never been out of compliance, and that the data does not support adding more firefighters. It also does not support adding more police officers. I actually went to a police commission meeting, and one of the police commissioners, who's a retired police officer himself, said, yes, adding more police officers will not necessarily reduce our crime rates. I think there are things that we can do as citizens to be aware of our surroundings, to be calling the police when we see something. There are things we can do with our state legislators. There are also things that we can do with our judicial system that I think would make a far bigger difference. So I actually am opposed to this budget, and I encourage those who are also concerned about this increase at a time when people are still feeling financial pinches to come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Scott Friedman, 17 Cooper Road. I want to start off by commending the first responder who spoke earlier. And I like his suggestion that if these two departments need to grow, that they should grow together. And so earlier I said that I thought we should shift the 2 police positions to 2 fire positions. I think we should split that and grow them together and do one of each. I think at least at a minimum that does something to address fire, which has been chronically underfunded in my opinion. But I also want to spend a little bit of time addressing the prior 2 comments, the second comments, which is to say, Sally Buemi, you know of no other first selectman who spends so much time on economic development. I know of no third select woman or Board of Finance member, Nancy Barrett, who spends so much time fighting to cut the Board of Ed budget specifically and proactive budgeting in general. As focused as you are on proper process and budgeting, there was a major transition in the leadership of the Democratic Town Committee over this year. I don't know if everybody's aware of it. And as you walked out the door, there was mismanagement of funds of our party, destroyed documents, and deleted assets.
This is inappropriate.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can you please address the speaker? He cannot address anyone in the audience.
We're supposed to be talking about the budget, not about nonsense garbage for the Democratic Party.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what. Everybody calm down.
Don't imply I had anything to do with it.
Let's calm down, everybody.
No, I did not.
This is inappropriate.
If you can't calm down, then I'll ask you to leave the auditorium. Mr. Freeman, you do need to relate this to the budget. It's a
Sure.
public budget hearing.
And my apologies. From a budgetary perspective, we need to invest in our town, and we need to fund the critical pieces of public safety and education that make our town a place that I want my family to grow up, to be a part of, and that I want to invite friends to come to be a part of and to be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, my name is Frederick Rodriguez. I live at 27 Westfield Road. I will not and cannot support this budget. I heard a number of times about smart investments, but smart investments are those investments that control volatile costs. I did not hear anything about controlling volatile costs. What I see is a town budget on a spending spree. Other districts have used smart investments to put solar farms in their backyards or in their schools and have made that part of their curriculum. The largest wealth investment, as Mr. Frieda said, is your home. But it will no longer be your largest wealth investment if our fire cannot get to it. The other thing I cannot support, the reason why I cannot support this budget is because this budget is not equitable. As Sally Bloomey has taught me, a rough mill rate is about $400 to $500 increase on an average home. With this budget increase and the increase on the reevaluation, roughly everyone on an average home will pay in the next year to 18 months $1,000. That is not equitable. Not when students in North Haven, about 25.2% of our students are recorded at low to moderate income. Those people cannot afford another $1,000. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Mr. Gabriel.
Got a little tense in here.
So I got cut off in my last comment, and I sort of ended on a little bit of a negative note, so I didn't want to go out on a negative note. That's never a good thing. So I want to read what I was going to finish with before. And what I wanted to sort of briefly address was what I would call the quality of life program. Seeing that up on the screen, what Mr. Frieda put up there about the things that'll first get cut, they sadden me, but they don't surprise me necessarily. And I think having a top-class library, having a vibrant Parks and Rec department, having a responsive public works unit, these are all the essentials of what a good government looks like at the municipal level. And I've had the pleasure of working with some of the people who diligently work behind the scenes in these units, and they are the type of people who make this a town that I want to live in, and people that make it a town that other people might want to move into and lay down roots, as me and my family have. These are people who I'm sure are taking pay cuts from the comparable work they'd be doing in the private sector, and further cuts here could result in the loss of things that are the type of things that make our town special. I'd also love to call on the business community to contribute and innovate new ways to help us thrive with affordable, low-cost entertainment, attractions, and solutions for our various fiscal predicaments. We have a lot of great traditions here. Let's start some new ones. We need to get ourselves out of an austerity mindset and backwards thinking mindset about how much things used to cost and focus on what we need to do to make our town succeed. If we start driving people out of the work who work tirelessly to make these things happen and chip away at our standard of living, then we are going to get what we pay for. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am? I'm sorry. Okay, hi.
Good evening. Thais Moore, 550 Clintonville Road. Leaning firmly on speak, even if your voice quivers right now, because this is a little nerve-wracking for me. But what is not nerve-wracking is that I 500% support the budget. So thank you all for your work on the budget. I also want to say thank you to the first responder who spoke before, and thank you for the service of all of our first responders in this town. I love the idea of first responders growing together. One of the things that he mentioned was the difference in services, how that changed, how we're talking about more mental health crises. We heard from some members about cutting some of the positions that have been asked for. If you don't, and then thinking about what the other costs as it relates to insurance, it's not just the salary, it's the cost of insurance. But what we're not talking about is if we don't add that, what that crisis could be for the existing employees who are working here who have to take on that additional work, what that feels like to them, and what type of crisis that could happen. It's not fear-mongering. I happen to work in the insurance brokerage world, and we are delivering some very hard insurance numbers to our clients day after day. And mental health is one of the biggest cost drivers right now. So in support of our North Haven employees, our North Haven educators, I just want to say I fully support this budget and support new positions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Would anyone like to speak again? Going once? Going twice? So I just want to remind you now that we're, yes, ma'am. No, come back up. That's what we're here for.
And the other piece of that is ensuring that we're supporting the, I don't have to say my name and everything again because I just left, right?
I'm sorry.
I don't have to say my name and everything again because I just left, right? Is supporting the entire student. So DEIB has come up a lot in our discussions. I happen to be a Black woman who lives in town, and I know the hard work that our administrators, our educators, our superintendent, assistant superintendent, and director of student services has put into making sure that we're supporting our students, as well as our educators who are learning what it means. So it doesn't just mean what race and faith and all of that. We have to support our staff as they are aging out, our new young professionals as they're coming in. What does that mean to be in the workplace? But also the students. It's not just middle and high school, it's also elementary school. So it's adding that our school psychologists and social workers are dealing with things that they may not have had to before. So that is, again, why this is important. So I just wanted to make a plug for DEIB in our schools.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else? All right, so right before we end this public hearing, just two quick reminders. Annual budget town meeting, May 13th, back here. Referenda, May 21st. And then if you can't make it to the polls on referenda day, absentee ballots become available in my town clerk's office as of May 2nd. You can go ahead and file an application as soon as you like, but I can't send out the ballot until the 2nd of May. Any other person would like to speak? I see none. Thank you very much for attending our public hearing, and have a lovely night.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the Town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.